What if I told you the smoking gun evidence that sends people to prison for decades isn't as reliable as we've been led to believe? Imagine being locked away for a crime you didn't commit, all because of a smudge on a glass. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking realities in our criminal justice system. Fingerprint evidence isn't the infallible gold standard we've been taught to believe. For over a century, fingerprints have been presented in courtrooms as virtually unquestionable proof of guilt. Television shows reinforce the idea that a fingerprint match is a slam-dunk conviction. But what if I told you that experts often get it wrong, and innocent people pay the price? We've all heard it since childhood. Everyone has unique fingerprints that remain unchanged throughout life. This fundamental assumption forms the backbone of fingerprint evidence in criminal cases worldwide. But here's where things get disturbing. While fingerprints may indeed be unique, our methods of identifying and matching them are deeply flawed. Fingerprint analysis isn't the exact science it's portrayed to be. It's a subjective process relying heavily on human judgment. We've all seen shows like CSI, where they upload a fingerprint into a supercomputer and wait while the computer does a bunch of very precise calculations and gives a match to a suspect. But this is entirely fantasy. When fingerprint examiners compare prints, they're not using precise mathematical formulas or definitive measurements. They're using their eyes and personal interpretation. They are quite literally doing a side-by-side comparison underneath a microscope and writing their opinion on whether or not they think it is a match. And this is where the trouble begins. In 2004, the world was rocked by the Madrid train bombings that killed 191 people. The FBI quickly identified an American lawyer named Brandon Mayfield as a suspect after claiming to find his fingerprint on a bag containing detonators. They declared it a 100% match. Mayfield was arrested and held for 2 weeks as a material witness. There was just one problem. Brandon Mayfield had never been to Spain. His passport was expired. He hadn't left the United States in over a decade. Even when Spanish authorities informed the FBI that they believed the fingerprint belonged to someone else entirely, the FBI stood firm on their identification. It wasn't until Spanish police conclusively identified the print as belonging to an Algerian national named Unan Daoud that the FBI finally released Mayfield. Just consider the implications here. The world's premier law enforcement agency, with its cutting-edge technology and highly trained experts, made a catastrophic error on something we've been told is virtually impossible to get wrong. You might think the Mayfield case was just a rare anomaly, but the truth is far more troubling. False fingerprint identifications happen with alarming frequency. Take Stefan Cowens, who spent 6.5 years in a Massachusetts prison for allegedly shooting a police officer. A fingerprint examiner testified that Cowan's print was found on a glass mug handled by the perpetrator. This testimony was crucial to securing his conviction. In 2004, DNA testing proved conclusively that Cowens wasn't the shooter. When authorities re-examined the fingerprint evidence, they discovered it wasn't even his print. The Boston Police Department fingerprint unit was subsequently shut down and its analysts investigated. Or consider Lana Kanan from Indiana, who was convicted of murder based on a detective's fingerprint testimony despite his lack of proper training. After serving years behind bars, an independent expert determined the print didn't match Kanan at all. When re-examined, even the detective admitted he'd made a mistake. How often do fingerprint examiners get it wrong? Studies revealed disturbing statistics. An FBI study found the false positive error rate could be as high as 1 error in 306 cases. Even more alarming, a Miami-Dade study found a false positive rate of 1 in 18. Think about what that means in practical terms. If fingerprint evidence were used in 1,800 criminal cases, approximately 100 people could be wrongfully implicated based on false fingerprint matches. These aren't just abstract numbers. They represent real people whose lives are destroyed by flawed forensic evidence. So why does this supposedly foolproof system fail so catastrophically? Several key factors contribute to these dangerous errors. Subjective analysis. Fingerprint comparison relies heavily on human judgment. When comparing partial or smudged prints, examiners must make subjective decisions about whether patterns match. Confirmation bias. Once an examiner believes a print matches a suspect, cognitive bias can influence them to see similarities that aren't actually there and ignore differences that are. Poor quality prints. Crime scene fingerprints are often incomplete, smudged, or distorted. They rarely match the clear full prints taken under controlled conditions at police stations. Lack of standardization. There's no universal standard for determining how many matching points are needed for a positive identification. Different countries and jurisdictions use different thresholds. Examiner overconfidence. Fingerprint experts often testify with absolute certainty, claiming 100% matches when such certainty isn't scientifically justified. Inadequate training. Some examiners lack proper training, but are still permitted to testify as experts, as we saw in Lana Kanan's case. The problem extends beyond the fingerprint lab and into the courtroom. Juries give tremendous weight to fingerprint evidence, often viewing it as indisputable scientific proof. When an expert confidently testifies that a fingerprint belongs to the defendant, it's extraordinarily compelling to jurors. Defense attorneys face an uphill battle challenging this testimony. Most lack the specialized knowledge needed to effectively cross-examine fingerprint experts, and most defendants can't afford to hire their own experts to review the evidence. This perfect storm creates a dangerous imbalance where flawed evidence goes unchallenged, leading to wrongful convictions. Behind each wrongful conviction lies a devastating human toll. Stephen Cowens lost 6.5 years of his life, separated from family, branded a cop shooter, and subjected to the brutal realities of prison life. Brandon Mayfield described his ordeal as humiliating and embarrassing. His reputation was severely damaged and his family traumatized. And these are just the cases we know about. How many others remain behind bars, convicted by flawed fingerprint evidence, waiting for someone to prove their innocence? Part of the problem is that fingerprint analysis has largely escaped the rigorous scientific scrutiny applied to other forensic methods. In 2009, the National Academy of Sciences released a groundbreaking report that questioned the scientific foundation of many forensic disciplines, including fingerprint analysis. The report concluded that many fingerprint examiners made claims exceeding what could be scientifically justified. It called for better research, more standardized procedures, and greater acknowledgement of error rates and limitations. But change comes slowly in the criminal justice system. While some improvements have been made, many of the fundamental problems persist. To prevent more wrongful convictions, several reforms are desperately needed. Acknowledge limitations. Fingerprint experts should honestly acknowledge the limitations of their field and avoid claiming absolute certainty. Blind testing. Examiners should analyze prints without knowing which one belongs to the suspect, reducing the risk of cognitive bias. Standardized procedures. Universal standards should govern how many points of similarity are required for identification. Error rates. Juries should be informed about known error rates in fingerprint matching. Independent verification. Multiple independent examiners should verify each identification before it's presented in court. Proper training. All fingerprint examiners should meet rigorous training standards before being permitted to testify as experts. Better defense resources. Defense attorneys need access to qualified experts who can review prosecution fingerprint evidence. To be clear, fingerprint evidence isn't worthless. When properly collected, analyzed, and presented with appropriate acknowledgement of its limitations, it can be a valuable investigative tool. The problem isn't fingerprints themselves. It's our flawed systems for analyzing them and our unrealistic expectations about their infallibility. The criminal justice system must balance the need to solve crimes with the paramount importance of not convicting the innocent. When we treat fingerprint evidence as infallible, we jeopardize that balance. The good news is that awareness is growing. Organizations like the Innocence Project have highlighted the role of flawed forensic evidence in wrongful convictions. Some courts are becoming more cautious about allowing overconfident fingerprint testimony, and some fingerprint units are implementing better procedures to reduce the risk of errors. but progress remains slow and inconsistent. Too many criminal cases still treat fingerprint evidence as definitive proof of guilt, and too many jurors still believe what they've seen on TV crime shows. Real change will require continued advocacy, education, and legal reforms. It will require judges who understand the limitations of fingerprint evidence and are willing to exclude testimony that claims unfounded certainty. It will require more funding for defense experts and more research into error rates and best practices. Most importantly, it will require all of us to question what we think we know about forensic science and to demand a criminal justice system that values accuracy over conviction rates. As we've seen today, fingerprint evidence isn't the foolproof, objective science that popular culture and courtroom testimony have led us to believe. It's a subjective process with significant error rates, vulnerable to human bias and misinterpretation. When we blindly trust fingerprint evidence, we risk condemning innocent people to prison for crimes they didn't commit. The cases of Brandon Mayfield, Stephen Cowens, and Lana Kanan should serve as sobering reminders of what happens when we place too much faith in flawed forensic methods. Remember, questioning the system isn't about letting guilty people go free. It's about ensuring that innocent people don't lose their freedom. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.